Thanks for joining us.
What's up? Thank you so much for having me.
If you want to tell us your name and tell us what you do.
Yeah, my name is Ingri Pauline, and I am a big dumb jock.
Big dumb jock. How do you define that? Elaborate on that.
No, not really. I am a women's health and fitness instructor or personal trainer. I'm a personal trainer. I'm a well-read personal trainer, and I deal with all women-specific issues in fitness. So anything like around like menstruation and training, pre and postpartum fitness, and then perimenopause going into menopause, like those hormonal transitions that women go through. That's my specialty. Like really helping women, kind of like just use those hormonal transitions and like lessen the negative side effects, and then also just like deal with women specific issues. There are literally so many, so I just work in that realm.
And what brought you to Vegas?
Taxes. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, like everybody's like taxes. No, I'm born and raised in LA. I lived in Berlin for a while, and then I moved back to the States. I moved back for love. I know, very stupid, but it worked out. So I moved back to LA for a little bit, and I knew I wasn't going to stay there because I've been trying to break up with LA like 3 or 4 times, and my parents actually lived here. And so when I was in Berlin, I had been coming out to visit them, and I always landed in the Vegas airport, and then I just started like hiking and mountain biking and like kind of climbing and getting to know Vegas from like a local point of view, and it's a great city. And then so when my boyfriend, now husband, and I were like looking around, he told me he'd never live here. And then we looked at a lot of other places, and he decided that this was not a bad place to live, that it was actually pretty awesome. So that's why we're here. Yeah.
Yeah, Vegas definitely has a way of like sucking people in. Like people come and visit here, or they don't think they're going to live here, and then next thing they know, they've been here 16 years. Yeah, totally. And there's so much physical activity, and there's so much outside of just the strip, and it's like super easy to get friends to visit you. And then also he does a lot of deep sea fishing, so that was like important that he could like go on a 3 or 4 day fishing trip and then just be able to drive back with all of his like tuna and dorado and stuff like that. So yeah. Very cool. So you have kind of a unique travel and like lived perspective across the world and how you gained experience. Do you want to go through that?
Yeah, sure. I'm a bit of a wanderer. I mean, not anymore, but yeah, no, I've taught CrossFit in 5 different, like I taught CrossFit in India. I've taught CrossFit in Norway, in Germany, in Las Vegas, and Los Angeles. And I mean, if you count my online escapades, also like Alaska and Australia and more Germany, and Mexico actually too. But where do I even start? My parents are both they both lived abroad when they were younger because they're first generation Americans. And then when we were in our teens, my parents brought us abroad, and we lived in Berlin, came back to the United States. And I was like really planning my escape like ever since. I was in the Navy and I traveled around, and then I got out of the Navy, came back to LA for school. And then after college, I got my bachelor's in kinesiology. And then after college, I went backpacking through India, and I decided I would not come home. Like I went through Berlin, and I was like, well, this place is great. I'm just going to stay here. I had like $500 in a backpack and I just like did whatever I could to make it work. And I lived there for about 4 years until I moved back to the United States. And I've just been kind of doing fitness and training ever since I was in the military. So yeah, living the good life, really.
And what got you into CrossFit?
I was in the United States Navy. I was in special operations. I was first air crew. I became an air crew. I went through air crew school. I was a rescue swimmer candidate, and then I went over to EOD, which is explosive ordnance disposal. And I remember I was training for that, and I saw like these really like gnarly, salty looking dudes in the gym, and they were like doing this really crazy workout, and it was probably like cleans and box jumps and some burpees and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, that looks great. Like, what are you doing? And I just got in on a workout, and it was just really awesome. Am I allowed to curse?
Yeah,
okay. Okay, I'm still a sailor. I totally have a mouth like a sailor. It was really fucking awesome, and I just had a really great time. And then so that's when I started doing like CrossFit and weightlifting is sort of in the military. And this was like 2006, 2007, so CrossFit was still very small, and it was very much like first responders and police officers and special operations, which was like Greg Glassman's like like, I mean, he like, to make money, he made it for rich people, but like he was really hoping and he was really pushing the operator route. And so it was starting to just slowly, quietly spread through the spec ops communities. And that's how I originally got into CrossFit. And then when I got out, I was just lifting weights and just kind of like doing some stuff. And then when I got into college, like CrossFit just became a lot more prevalent. Like this was like, I got into college in 2008. I was in a gym around 2010 or 2011. And like, that's when CrossFit really started like spreading around the world like herpes. No joke. Like it blew up. When I moved to Berlin in 2013, there was two gyms in Berlin. When I left in 2017, there were like 13 or 15 gyms. And so I really, like, I was with CrossFit just watching it grow. Like, I just watched it blow up everywhere and it just completely changed. So, I mean, that's how I got into CrossFit. And I stayed because of its movement philosophy. Like, what I knew about fitness, because I also learned, like, I played water polo growing up, and I learned to lift weights when I was in the military because I just had these goals, and like none of the training that I was doing could get me to where I needed to be in order to perform as an operator. So I just literally walked up to the three biggest guys in the gym and I was like, I want to get strong. Can you help me? And they were like, yeah, totally. Like, sure, we'll lift with some cute chick, right? Yeah, not a problem. And they got me really strong. I remember, I like under their tutelage, I bench pressed 225. That was my PR. And like, I know I cannot do that today. No, that's not my priority. But I was like, I mean, I got really strong very quickly. And I realized that like weightlifting got me to a place of like feeling powerful and getting like a runner's high in like 15 minutes instead of like 45 or an hour. So that's how I got into like weightlifting and stuff. And then just when I actually attended the CrossFit class, I think I got my CrossFit level 1 in 2000, somewhere between 2010 and 2012. I got my level 1. But I remember just like, I like loved the philosophy because like what I knew about functional fitness and about what people actually have to do in the world and like how they need to move, it just lined up so perfectly with the movement fundamentals of CrossFit and the movement philosophy of CrossFit. Because I had been taking, I like learned to get strong from like these big beefy dudes, and like that's great, and I got super strong, but it wasn't super mobile. Like the guy who taught me how to bench press, like he couldn't even touch his shoulder, you know what I mean? Like his shadow eclipsed the sidewalk, but he couldn't run and he couldn't do a lot of pull because he's so heavy, so so I just like, from what I knew about weightlifting and what I knew also about like rehab, because I'd worked in PT the whole time I was going to university. So like knowing what I knew about weightlifting and knowing what I knew about like rehabilitative movements and functional movement and stuff like that, going to CrossFit was just like, like it was like heavens parted, like God reached down and gave me a plan of like, this is how you stay awesome. So and I love the community too. That was like also something that was so attractive for CrossFit, was that it was literally like a church of iron. Like the whole reason why I was successful overseas was because the fact that like literally anywhere that I went, I had a family to join, and we spoke the same language, and that was the language of like CrossFit and iron. And like that's like one of the most amazing things about CrossFit is like, anywhere that you go, if you go to a CrossFit gym, like you have people that are like-minded, you have people to work out with, to bond with, and you have people who believe in health and fitness, but also you have people that are going to like take care of you. So it's like when I would travel, instead of like reading a tourist book, I just hit a CrossFit gym within the first day I was there, and I'm like hang around, talk to some people. I'm like, hey, where's the best coffee? Where's the best gnocchi? Where's the best, you know what I mean? So that's what really like got me into CrossFit, and then what kept me there and why I still believe in it today. I don't necessarily teach all CrossFit all the time. In fact, I'm not currently coaching CrossFit, but it's still like within my training philosophy that I use for my clients.
It's pretty amazing too, is once you made a really good point. When you go into a gym, you have this network already set up for you of people that do everything. So you're going to a CrossFit gym, there'll be people in there, there'll be police, there'll be people that are roofers, people that maybe are like making coffee.
Dancers, former judo stars,
Mm-hmm.
like really crazy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's perfect. So now whenever we're looking for someone, like, oh, we need a plumber, like just ask people at the gym, and then someone will have somebody for you. It's amazing.
Yeah. I remember when I was coaching, I would liken it. I was like, being a CrossFit coach is like being a mayor of like a tiny town. It's so true. Like I coached CrossFit. I coached at 3 different gyms, but one of them didn't work out too well when I was in Berlin, just because like. I don't know. Anyway, but I worked at 2 different gyms, and the first gym that I worked at, pretty much every single gym that opened after this gym came from the gym that I worked at. So it's like I worked at like the second gym that was, or first or second gym that was opened in Berlin, and then a bunch of people left that gym and opened their own gym. So I pretty much knew every like professional competitive athlete and gym owner in Berlin. And then I went and I worked at a different gym, and it was like almost like the Manhattan of Berlin. It was Mitte, which literally means the middle. And it was like a very chic place, and like there were lots of like restaurants and shops and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, you walk down the street, and I was like, Ingri, like come and get a coffee, get a wine, like come on, it's like wear my t-shirt, you know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, this is nice. Like, this is, like you can just tap into like a really great network when you're a part of a CrossFit gym. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as far as, what else do you do if you're not doing CrossFit or training people in Vegas? What are the other activities that you partake in?
So, I'm like a big nerd. Like, I love to read. I always have a book with me. I like to read. I also I do a lot of hiking, and I'm trying to get back into cycling, and I was like hoping I would get back into it this summer, but it was just so hot that I was like, okay, I'm going to have to wait till fall. So a lot of reading, a lot of cycling, a lot of, I like finding like odd events. Like I love amateur comedy. It's like, sometimes it's super great and sometimes it's like so painful. So I look for like little shows and events, like just like strange little things. It's been a little bit difficult since Corona, all the pandemic stuff, just because everything shut down. But there are so many interesting events that go on in Vegas on like a regular basis. Like 2 years ago, we went to, it was like The King and His Slaves, or The Emperor and His Slaves, or something. Anyway, it was a film from 1929. It was a silent film, and so it's just backed by instrumental music. And it was down at the Henderson Community Center, or like they have this big event center down there, and they have a Philharmonic. So it was like they were playing the movie and then doing live orchestra music in the background, and then so there's like really fun stuff that's just like these random events that happen in Vegas. And I was like the Highland Games. Like, I don't know if you guys been to the Highland Games.
It was here? Or like they had an event?
The regional competition is here. So this is the one before that this is like the one that they compete like in Las Vegas and like West Coast region, but also the one that they compete in before they go to Worlds. And if you like CrossFit and you like strongman stuff, like this is the place to go. And there's like beer and Irish music and shortbread cookies and lots of plaid. It's really great. There's like tons of fun, weird things in Vegas. And that's what I like about, that's like part of the amenities of living in a city like this. And that's what I like to do.
And some of those things they're really hard to know that they do those things.
Yeah.
And we've been here for 3 years now. And every once in a while, someone will tell us that this place has this thing you can go do. And we normally don't go to the Strip that much, but the other day they were playing a movie at the Cosmo, but they played on the sign, like that's on the Strip.
Yeah.
And then the speakers around the pool play the sound. So then they put the chairs in the pool. So you're just sitting there.
They're just lounging
in the pool.
Lounge chair in the pool watching a movie on their sign.
Yeah. And if you're a local, you can get into a lot of these things for free or like heavily discounted. Like the pool at the plaza, like that's my husband's favorite pool. It was like redone like a 60s like horror flick or whatever. There's like these comic book murals places.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah, and dude, it's free for locals.
Wow.
Yeah, because they're just trying to, I don't know, because like coronavirus had everybody's trying to make up a monetary loss, but like there's so many places, if you just look for like local stuff, it's like a lot of it's free or like $5.
Huh.
Yeah.
Very good. Definitely have to check that out.
Yeah, you have a military discount too for the Cosmo if you ever want to go.
Oh, yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
So what's something you commonly see in your practice that you wish more people knew?
Geez, how much time do you have? Let me see. I mean, just in general movement techniques, I would say that if we're talking about movement, I wish that more people would pull initiating from their shoulders rather than their elbow. I'm sure you guys see that a lot, right? That's like the best way to get like a tendinitis, either medial or lateral tendinitis in your elbow. And then, so just like pull initiating from the shoulder. But I guess just like working with women, because I do a lot of work around syncing your menstrual cycle with your training cycle. And then also like syncing sort of like your work and your nutrition around your menstrual cycle. And so I get a lot of women asking about like menstruation and periods and just general health in that direction. And like it always comes up like, what about like a wonky period, like a period that like just flattens you out? You're super tired, or it's like a week late or whatever. And we've like, let's just say nobody's pregnant, nobody has PCOS, and like your period is a lot later. So what I would like people to know is that actually like if you have like a wonky menstruation cycle, that it depends on what you were doing 90 days before, like what your stress level and what your lifestyle was like 90 days before that period, because it takes 90 days for that egg to fully to have develop the corpus around it and then burst and travel through the fallopian tubes. It takes full 90 days for it to actually mature in order to get released. And so that's always like a game changer for women, and like how they think about their period and like their period health. And then also after ovulation, you burn up to 200 calories more a day.
So you then work their training around that fact?
Around what fact? Around, well,
if they're burning extra calories and everything, like do you do nutrition plans as well, or do you
Yeah, so that's probably like a easier statistic to grab onto and work from is that so after ovulation, which is pretty much usually mid-cycle. If you have a shorter cycle, it's going to be earlier. Longer cycle, it's going to be later. But after ovulation, you burn 200 calories more a day. And then women always complain about like being so hungry and having cravings and stuff. So one of the things about cravings is that if you're craving a specific food, like if you're craving pickles or you're craving chocolate or something, that's usually a vitamin or mineral deficiency, right? So chocolate is like, if women are always craving chocolate, like I'm a chocoholic, like I drink cacao powder, like have unsweetened chocolate like every day. So I don't really count. Like I'm just constantly consuming cacao. But but if you're somebody who like really craves chocolate, that's usually the signs of a magnesium deficiency. And most people in general, and but especially women, do have a really bad magnesium deficiency. And when I correct period issues that are just like period discomfort or whatever, I usually just tell them to take like a magnesium and zinc supplement, magnesium and or zinc, depending on what the symptoms are. But usually magnesium and zinc, boom, that'll do it. It'll set women right correctly. But anyway, so we have these cravings because it's like you have ovulation and then there's 2 weeks before your period, right? So after ovulation, nobody really accounts, like usually a lot of people are tracking their food, right? So it's like nobody really accounts for this like a very rapid increase in calories, right? So you go 7 whole days and you're burning 200 calories more, okay? And then you're in that week before your period. So that's like our classic PMS period. And that's when, or PMS phase, and that's when women get like most of these cravings and they feel really hungry. Well, think about it, the week before we're burning 200 calories more, at 7 days later, we're at like what? Like a 12,000 calorie or 1,200 calorie caloric deficit, right? So it's like, yeah, no wonder you're hungry. You've been working out and you haven't accounted for this. Like you're in an actual like a caloric deficit. That's if you're cutting, like now you're in an even deeper caloric deficit, right? So it is a tool that can be used for fat loss, but most people aren't really accounting for this. So by the time you get to this week, you're super hungry just simply because you haven't been eating to like the needs of your body. So I'm always telling women, like right after they ovulate, like put a little bit more protein on your plate, like eat a couple more servings of fruit. I'm not somebody who thinks fruit is bad or evil. There's like talk in the nutrition world of this. I'm like, no way. Anyway, but yeah, just like put a little bit more healthy food on your plate, and that'll do a lot for like curbing those the so-called cravings when it's like legitimate hunger, right? That'll do a lot to just curb all that stuff right before your period.
So speaking of food, what is your favorite cheat meal?
You mean my treat meal?
Treat meal.
Yeah.
We'll change it to treat
meal. Yeah, I think you say treat meal. That's a better question.
Yeah, cheat meal is like, because it's like you're doing something bad. And it's like, no, man. Like, I deserve this burger. I really love burgers. I love I'm super picky. Like in Berlin, they had like gourmet burgers because they didn't get, they made burgers from like an artisanal food from the Americas, right? But like here, it's just like its origins in fast food. So I feel like we don't have as many like gourmet nice burger places. But there's this place. My favorite treat meal is like, it's down at the Dillinger in Boulder City, and they have the best burgers. The best burgers, all named after like old gangsters and stuff. It looks like a bar from the 30s. It's so fantastic. Mm-hmm. But that's like my favorite. Like a good burger is like, it's the best.
The place is good. We've been there actually.
Yeah.
In the last month or two, right?
Yeah, we went there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the second best is Frankie's up there. Their Stroll, which is like a cross between like a calzone and like a baguette panini. It's dope.
For a burger?
No, it's a calzone and that's my second treat meal. Yeah. Besides right after burger. Right. Anything handheld, I'm like, yay.
Yes. So what would you compare that? So this is more of a food question. Berlin gourmet burgers. What makes it so different about?
I would say that they're like, it's a little bit more thoughtful. Like we tend to think of like burgers here as like this greasy kind of messy thing. And like there, it was just more like artistic, and they thought about flavors a little bit more, and it wasn't nearly as greasy. Like in America, they really think of like it's supposed to be some like cheat, unhealthy food, and there it's just supposed to be food, right? It's like a burger. So like I would go to all these like independent burger shops, and like I don't know, they were just so good. So good. Yeah, like blown anything out of the water that I've eaten here, which I hate to say because like I'm an American, and like we're talking about burgers, which is the American food. But there's just something about it, man. Over in Berlin, they like, I don't know, it's just all different kinds of burgers. Like they would put brie cheese on some. I remember there was this one called the Santa Claus. It was like a seasonal one, and it had cranberry sauce and like some stuffing, brie cheese, arugula. It was like all the Christmas colors in a burger. Oh, this is delicious.
With some reindeer in it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, some reindeer meat. Yeah, maybe up in Norway. Yeah.
That's good. So can you explain, so maybe someone who's not even aware of like what's training around your like menstruation, or just like what are things that, if no one ever considered that, like what is it, or what are things that women should know about training and menstruation?
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things when I started getting into this, I had seen a couple of like just blog posts from personal trainers, but like when I started reading more into it and actually pulled up like the research behind it, I'm like, dude, this is pretty significant. Like you were talking about hormonal changes, like deeply affecting performance, like shear force, like generation capacity, and like just like there are different times in the menstruation cycle where it's like you can expect to perform well, and then there are times in the menstruation cycle where it's like you don't expect to perform well. In fact, the front half, the follicular phase of our menstrual cycle is when testosterone and estrogen is on the rise, and those are typically anabolic hormones, right? They're builders, right? And then you have a deep decline in this testosterone and estrogen after you ovulate. I mean, there's a little bump in estrogen in the luteal phase, the last half of the phase, but it's marked by a predominance of progesterone. And like, yeah, progesterone is an androgen, which is, it's the same. It's like a testosterone is an androgen, progesterone is an androgen, but it doesn't have the same building capacities as testosterone and estrogen. So it's like, we have this, it's more of a catabolic hormone, right? Because we think of, there's like in the luteal phase, there's that rise of progesterone, and then it drops quickly off, and that decrease in progesterone is what signals the uterine lining to shed. So it's like a clearing out. It's more destructive than it is, it's more catabolic than it is anabolic, right? To speak in scientific terms. So, And so I'm always telling women like when to prioritize really like a lot of strength training, right? And when to prioritize like more cardio and endurance and stuff like that. Like I always think one of my clients said this is the burn half and no, this is the build half and then this is the burn half, right? So this is like the front half is like when we're building the most muscle, when we need to do strength work, when we're working within like the 8, 9, 10 RPE. And we're just like going pedal to the metal 110%. Then you'll ovulate, you're kind of riding that high. And then but after that, we're sort of, it behooves us to put a little bit more like bursts of cardio and like more like HIIT train, more Metcon-ish type stuff into our training, and then just lifting for maintenance. So that would be like your sets of like 8 and 10 and 12, right? And we would go more at like a 7 to 8, more 8-ish RPE right after ovulation. But then when you get to like the premenstrual phase, like that week before menstruation, like there's like a steep decline in performance, and like actually our ability to actually generate force also drops off. Whereas in ovulation, we're like peaking on hormones, so we can actually, our ability to generate force is like, it's like like an increased involuntary force generation capacity. That means like 1 week you're exuding X amount of effort and you can lift Y weight. The next week you're exuding the exact same amount of effort, X amount of effort, and you do Y and Z weight. Like you can just, when you're ovulating, you perform better, right? So then it's like coupled by when you're menstruating and right before menstruation, your performance, like it declines. Like you simply cannot, you don't have enough force generation capacity. You don't have the chutzpah in you to be able to just like endurance work and like go to like full max effort, right? So I always talk about like just throttling it back, like exerting yourself definitely, but not like, you know, like, did you die, right? It doesn't count if you died. Like none of that. Like we need to learn how to like cruise down, like downshift and just cruise downhill without hitting the brake is like what I liken it to. And usually what happens with women is that they take that performance decrease so personally. Like there's not a woman out here. I mean, men have it too, but I'm not in a man's body. I don't, like, you guys have a bunch of testosterone. Every time I lift, I'm like, it must be really nice to have testosterone. Like it must be so cool. But, I know it'll never be me. I'll never do PEDs, but it's like, you know, like women take their performance really personally. Like they take their lack of performance, and it's not just in the gym. It's also like we see, you know, we're in a gym where people work, you know, and it's like these women, they have kids, they have a job, and they have a health regimen. And so that's like a lot of directions that you really have, like that's high performance. That's 3 different directions that you have to like pretty much give your all. And when you're not performing your best and you're not, you feel as though you're not showing up for the people you love, that takes a hit, right? And like if you've been doing like the same workout routine and then like one day you just can't do it, you're just like what you're 90% of your RM might as well feel like 110%. You can barely get it off the floor. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like we take that personally, but it's like, dude, don't take it personally. Just augment your training so that you can perform better, so that you're putting wins in your pocket, and that so you feel good and fresh, and so that don't kill yourself. Like if we're at like a decreased capacity for just work production, and I mean that in a athletic sense, but also like in a life sense, mm-hmm. you know, then like don't put pedal to the metal. Like pull it back just a little bit. Make sure you can show up for yourself. Make sure you can show up for the people in your family or the people that you work with, and just augment your training, right? And then in menstruation, that is like a time to just stop. Like if you're just gonna go to the gym and do body work and like do mobility and like do yoga and stuff, like I always say take the first day of your period completely off. Take that as a rest day. And like the second or third day, depending on what your period is like, what your actual menses experience is like, whether it's like heavy or light, short or long or whatever. But usually take the next like day 2 and day 3 sort of easy, gentle, like do your rehab, your body work, and just take that next week to just like it's like a full stop to a slow ramp up to like back on like pedal to the metal, you know? So
I think that's another great point too, is throughout, if you're just like doing it for fun or like doing it to stay in shape, there's no really like an off season in some senses, mm-hmm. where a lot of sports have that kind of in their training, and they know like, all right, this is when we're going to generally peak, or this is how we're going to slowly build. This is where we're going to build strength. It's not really mapped out for us in our life.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you're like, I don't know, anywhere between 20 and 70 years old, it's a long range of like training, but also there's like things in life that happen, and knowing that, you know, sometimes it's okay to take it easy, and it's okay to pull that throttle back. It's okay if you didn't reach your PR at that particular day, but I think that's something that more people in general should incorporate into there should be an off season, if you will.
Yeah, totally.
So what else do you do for your work?
So I work with, so I do, personal training. I have a personal training studio up in Summerlin, and I see patients both in person and online, and like hybrid if they need to. But one of the major areas that I work on a lot is actually postpartum fitness, pre and postpartum fitness. So augmenting training programs that already exist for pregnancy, and then also just the rehabilitation, pelvic floor, deep core rehabilitation for like after pregnancy and getting back into movement.
So how do you approach a postpartum patient different than a typical patient?
Even if I saw the same person before their pregnancy, during their pregnancy, once they give birth, and it's after their pregnancy, I still have to give them a movement assessment. So no matter how much I know them or how well I know them, we always start off from the beginning. And every single one of my postpartum clients, I always tell them we're moving from the inside out, right? Like the proximal to distal. We're moving from the core, and then once we get the core, we'll start going to the joints, like to the hips and the shoulders, and then we'll start going out. So from the inside out. And actually just learning about like postpartum fitness and like the impact that pelvic floor and core issues have. And then also just how little, like everybody needs pelvic floor and core work, like everybody. And I'm actually so surprised that like none of my anatomy, like I was in kinesiology, and like none of my anatomy books or any of my exercise physiology, and we never talked about pelvic floor. And it's so important because it's not just women that have pelvic floor issues, it's also men. And it's not just pregnant women that have pelvic floor issues. It's like all women, right? Pretty much, right? So I have actually taken, especially my online clients, like pretty much all of them go through my pelvic floor and core like 12-week rehab before we start anywhere. Because I know that if they go through this, then they're activating they're activating their core in the way that I want them to and the way that I teach them to. So that I know that by the time we get to like squats and overhead pressing, and like they know about bracing, they know about like a full pelvic, right? Because it's not just Kegels to like brace your pelvic floor. It's like a full lift, right? So that way I ensure that everybody, by putting everybody through some pelvic floor core work, I ensure that everybody in my tutelage ends up moving really well and moving from distal to proximal in the most primal sense, in the sense that we move from the core to the extremities. Yeah.
So how does one get into your 12-week program, or like kind of what's the process if someone wanted to work with you? What would it kind of look like?
Oh yeah, well, hit me up. Sure. And then I'm going to ask about like kind of just your goals. Like I usually ask like, what is your goal? And then what are your 2 to 3 things that you feel are standing in your way? And then with every single person I do a strategy call, and that just, I like have them fill out a pretty extensive health and fitness history form. And then we just go over it with a fine-tooth comb. And then I just sort of patterns emerge. People tell you about different things that have happened or their interests or something like that. And then I give them a bunch of resources. So even if somebody doesn't work with me after this hour, they know exactly where they need to go to get help for their specific issues, what they need to work on, and what they need to look for, even when they're working with a movement practitioner. Because like a lot of stuff is out of my scope. Like it's things that I can bat around, but it would just be irresponsible of me as like somebody who is like, I'm a personal trainer. Like I know a lot, but I'm a personal trainer, right? So it's like, I need to make sure that like, so I have a good reference network, and I make sure that like anybody who works with me knows where to get further help for whatever issues. And then also if I see a red flag, I can put them in touch with the right person. So we go through that strategy call, and then if you're interested in working together, then we work together. And I have a 5-week onboarding program in doc where I sort of share my philosophy, and like we talk about mindset, we talk about nutrition, talk about pelvic floor core work, talk about fitness, and just how we're going to approach training and my approach to training. And then just depending on where you are, what your goals are, what you're doing, you're going to go through another like 12 weeks of like sport specific training or a custom program or a pelvic floor core or something like that. So yeah. And 6 movement fundamentals, like the hip hinge, the knee dominant hip hinge, push, pull, loaded carry, and split stance. Those are like the 6 foundational movement foundations that I base my training on. And then of course I teach stuff like everything in between. I do much less gymnastic work now that I'm not in CrossFit, but I will always teach a burpee. I will defend burpees till the day I die, just like any good CrossFitter. God damn it, we'll defend burpees because they're important. It's important to know how to get off the floor quickly by your own strength, especially if you're somebody over the age of 55, right? Yeah.
And what do you want to leave the listeners with?
Go heavy, go hard, go nasty, and then chill.
And how can people find you?
You can find me at ingriPauline.athletics.com. So that's INGRIPAULINE athletics.com. And then you can just email me at ingripauline@gmail.com. Or you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm much more active on Twitter. I have many little nuggets of good information about training and women's issues in training on Twitter and IG. I'll get there. But yeah, I'm Ingri Pauline everywhere.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your knowledge with us today. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome.
We'd like to thank you for listening to La Vida Las Vegas podcast. We hope you enjoyed the time with our guests as much as we did. It would help us out so much if you could share, subscribe, or review our podcast or any combination of the 3. Thanks again, and remember to take care of yourself.